Welcome to the Conscious Radio Network's YouTube channel. Become enlightened, have fun, and tell all your friends and family to share with everyone they know. You can find us on Facebook and stay up to date on our Facebook group, or find us on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Our podcast can be found on Libsyn, iHeart, Spotify, Google Podcast, and more. Most of all, remember to go to our official website at consciousradionetwork.com for podcasts, posts, future shows, and scheduling. We also want to welcome our international audience. Don't stop now and join the community. Subscribe today.
This is the Conscious Radio Network.
Good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you might be on this spaceship we call Earth. Welcome to Conscious Radio Network's weekly podcast series, The Weekly Seance. I'm your host, Reverend Dr. Paul Meckes. If this is your first time watching, listening, wherever you might be on the YouTube channel, please click subscribe, like, share, and comment. Also, don't forget to follow us wherever you listen to your podcast. All the links below. Today, medical scientist, holistic health practitioner, high-performance life and business coach, beaming in from the Sunshine Coast of Australia. Our guest today believes we can all rise up through the pain and awaken the giant within. Serving in the military, public speaker, holistic health expert, mindset and life coach, author, medical scientist, and neuroscience researcher. Let's welcome to the show for the first time, Lisa Marree. Yeah, welcome.
Thank you so much. Gosh,
you are very, very welcome.
I'm so excited.
That's a pretty impressive and extensive bio you've got. How did this present itself to you?
Oh gosh, that's such a loaded question. And, you know, I guess I really just have to, first of all, thank you so much for having me on the show. I am so honored, and I just love woo to start with. So I really geek out on it. So I'm really in my comfort zone here for all of you woo lovers out there. I'd really just like to take the listeners back to what I believe where it all began. And I'm just going to paint a little picture of when I was 4 years old, because that's sort of the earliest memory that I have. And my sister and I, she was just a little bit older than me, we were called into my parents' bedroom, and my dad was sitting on the end of the bed with a single suitcase next to him, crying. And he just said, "I'm so sorry, but I can't stay here anymore. I have to leave." And, you know, as a child, I don't remember anything else of that moment apart from seeing him walk out the door down to the bus stop, but being so overcome with fear.
Yeah.
And, you know, I apart from all the other things that a little child would think of is, am I bad? You know, why don't you love me? All of these things. What we were left with was a woman with extreme violent psychiatric illness. And my mother was in and out of psychiatric wards as we were growing up, but my sister and I lived in fear. There was violence every day, both physical and psychological. And so that's sort of a lot of my childhood was blocked out. But I think it was because I was very fortunate that turning this into a funny story, you know how there's school carnivals where you have your track and field and you have your swimming. Well, I went to the school swimming carnival when I was about 6. Threw myself in the pool and got about halfway and started to sink. But at that moment, I was in love with swimming, and I went on to so I started training, and I went on to do competitive swimming. But that was a blessing in disguise, because what I was surrounded by were champions with a champion mindset. We had, national swimmers, world title swimmers, and even an Olympian in our club.
Wow.
And so I learned that they were my family. And it was, I was at home very rarely because I was 5 hours a day training. I was 6 hours a day at school. And for me, not being at home was safe. So, but what happened, it's a very mixed story, because I thought if I became a champion, I would win my mother's love. And also, it taught me how to develop resilience, a very strong mindset, to play mind movies, to win the race in my mind. And basically, if listeners know of Dennis Waitley, he's very famous for tapping into that aspect of world-class athletes of the body does not know the difference between you physically doing something and you playing it in your mind. So you're basically setting up your nervous system for that event to happen. And so I did become a national swimmer. But during that phase of 6 to 13, I became very introverted. I was basically just a silent observer of the world, of life, because I was too frightened to be out there. And I did things like, when I was asleep, I would visit planets, not knowing at the time that people call that astral travel. So, very early, and I always had this little inner voice that was just saying, Lisa, the world you live in this house is not normal. Just keep going. Just keep listening. Just keep following the little footsteps that are put in front of you. And I was always guided by that voice. And I was fortunate that life did not turn out so well for my sister, because she was exposed to that environment a lot more than what I was. But my swimming became my mother's obsession, because I was winning. She was sort of like the trophy mum. And I started to hate it. And this is a very interesting fact, and I want the listeners to think closely about this, is when they really start to have negative emotions about something, someone, they're so deeply unhappy, an illness occurs, an injury occurs if they're trying to get fit. Something gets in their way to stop their movement forward. And I started getting ear infection after ear infection after ear infection, which took me out of the pool.
Yeah.
And so I made the decision, as hard as it was, that I was no longer swimming for me, I was swimming for her. And I hated it. So I was a very angry child as well, but I could take that out in the pool. Very healthy place to channel that.
It's like boxing.
Yeah. And here's sort of like the next funny story. I always, even though my life has been so dark, there was always light in there, and I've sort of like a moth, I always tried to go towards the light. I was invited, and I don't believe in coincidences. I believe in synchronicities. If people have ever read Deepak Chopra's book, Synchro Destiny, it's a beautiful book. And I was invited to a martial arts school. And I thought, well, that sounds cool. I can learn how to defend myself properly at home.
Yeah.
And be not put in jail. And it was another community. It was another family, another group of leaders that I could be part of. And it was Kung Fu, but as life happens for you, not to you, it was a metaphysical club. So I was exposed to meditation, learning how to channel chi, your internal energy, learning all about that. And I felt so at home. I felt really comfortable. And I mastered that. I could do things that actually surprised me. It's just like, wow, did I just do that?
Oh, yeah.
That's cool. And I think that was really the beginning of me knowing that there was an out there as well. Really understanding that, you know, all these little guidance voices that I had inside, it was, you know, what I now call my higher self, just sort of helping me on the way through the journey I mean, all life is a collection of data. And we're born perfect. Then we get thrown into a human world, which is pretty screwed up. And then we spend the rest of our life and we spend the rest of our life undoing all that to come back to that wonderful bubbling bliss of joy. So are you cool with me just staying on this path?
Yeah, absolutely. Stay the path. Oh, yeah.
Okay. So, but things got pretty messy at home. Well, more messy, I should say, more destructive, because as a teen, I was 14, 15, you know, this is a really uncharted territory, because you're trying to figure out adulthood in a sort of way. And starting to take your stance. And I was really challenging my mother. And that was her condition, according to her psychiatrist, was labeled borderline personality with extreme narcissism. So when I started to stand up, that just made her more threatening, if that makes sense. And you know, she actually started to say that she was going to kill me while I was asleep. And that creates some sleeping issues, by the way.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't think I want to sleep in this house anymore.
So I decided to run away. I organized it back in the day, because I'm in my 50s now. You know, back in the 80s, there was very little child support in that way of runaway kids. And it was sort of like a halfway house, which was a very interesting place for a teenager, with the other occupants in the house, from drug addicts to alcoholics to you know, youth in and out of prison. But for me, that was even safer than being at home. And it gave me some breathing space. I was gone for a couple of weeks. And I made the decision at that point, because I was really, was I running away to just an unknown of where can I go after this, or was it just to have breathing space? And it turned out to be breathing space, fortunately. I was very, very ill. I had developed anorexia nervosa by this stage. So it's a very masochistic disease. You're in control. You control not to eat. And it was the only thing I could control in my life. And unfortunately, it created a lot of health problems as well, between the fear and everything else going on. But I went back home to finish year 12, so I was home another 12 months. The law enforcement was involved. It was very messy. And as soon as I finished school, I just thought, I've got to get away. And so the only thing that I could think of, because I had a stepfather at this stage who'd done live tours of Vietnam, alcoholic, you know, all the other mess that goes with it, that I just thought, I'm going to join the army, because they'll probably think that's a positive thing because he's an ex-soldier. So I did. On my 18th birthday, I signed my allegiance to the Queen. And that was my next runaway. But as we know in life, you can't keep running away because it's going to keep finding you.
Yeah. The destiny and your direction starts going, you look behind you. Oh, there's my shadow.
Yes, indeed. And so once again, it was another community. There were leaders there. And, you hear all of this bullying situation going on and getting yelled at and, people 1 inch from your face screaming at you. And that's all real.
Yeah.
But that was no problem. I actually annoyed them more by not responding.
You were used to it.
Hey, this was a walk in the park.
Yeah.
It's just like, what do you got?
Yeah.
But because my pattern of life, that was a significant thing I said then. Because my pattern of life was suffering, I was involved in a serious accident that left me lower limb disabled. And they could not rehabilitate me to full functioning again. So I was medically discharged from the service. And so with that, long story short, I spent the next 30 plus years with excruciating pain, not being able to get around unless I was on a walking stick, et cetera, et cetera. I had a hip replacement 5 years ago, which was amazing. I'm a bionic woman now. Still don't run that well. I look a bit odd. But what because I needed to continue to succeed, I needed that. Interesting, I was very successful, but I did not have fulfillment. Every time I achieved something, it was just like, what's next? That's not good enough. And so my conditioning was also, I needed to keep winning, achieving all of this stuff for significance. And if anybody has, listened to Tony Robbins, the 6 human needs, significance is up there in the top 3. Because we all want to be heard, we all want to be seen, we all want to be loved. And I still, my pursuit was happiness. I was on the journey of how do I achieve happiness? And all that was happening was, as life was unfolding, I was just going with my gut to see where it would lead me. I went on to university as a mature age student, became a medical scientist. I was working in oncology and the bone marrow transplant unit. And even though it was because the human body is incredible, gosh, we do terrible things to it, or terrible things happens to it, but it just wants to move towards wellness.
Yeah.
So if you put the right stuff in, you're going to move towards wellness. But it was very pharmaceutical driven, and it wasn't wellness focused, which challenged me, because I believe that health and wellness has some main pillars of practice. Good nutrition, moving your body, sleep and rest, good healthy information coming into your brain. All of these things are part of wellness, not just shoveling drugs down your system, which starts to shut down organs. And then you got to have more drugs to fix that problem. So, but during all of this time, I had developed my own systemic disease. I had multiple autoimmune complications. One of them was a hormone disease, and I had surgery over 14 times, a hysterectomy at 29. So once again, I was in a constant state of suffering. Yeah. And because I love the chakra system, the first 3 centers, the lower 3 centers, are our survival centers. And mine were clearly blocked in fear and pain and suffering. which consequently, that's where my disease and my injuries were.
Yeah.
Very interesting, isn't it?
Yep.
So, like, there's little light bulb moments going off in my life, well, all the time.
Yeah.
And I was still true to my practice. I would meditate. I did Tai Chi for many years, and that sort of, as the more I disabled and sick I became, that movement became more limited. But I resigned from my profession because I needed to find my own wellness solution. And I was very fortunate that once again, listening to my little inner voice, I was introduced to some wellness-based products, which happened to come with some mentors and a personal development company with it. And I was home again. I just thought, right, this is my next stage. Your gut's saying it's good to go this way. And personally, my body rebuilt. I was regaining wellness, and I'd become the healthiest I'd actually been in 20 plus years. So I'm in my early 30s at this stage.
Yeah.
And the other beautiful thing was that I was able to share that wellness, able to teach that wellness to people in a holistic approach of the things that I truly believed in. And I really also focused on the mindset aspect of it, because if anybody's trying to fix their health, if you want to lose weight or get fit, you just can't do the physical practice. You actually have to embrace it from a total mindfulness approach and believe that you are living in the healthy body that you want.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than most, because I've spent many years helping people lose weight, it's interesting that when they start, because they've had a totally crap diet of eating all sorts of things that are
Garbage,
classified as
fast
food substances,
yeah.
but they're not, they actually feel deprived. They think, oh, so I can't have and I just say, stop focusing on what you can't have. Yes, you can, but that's what got you there in the first place. Mm-hmm. Why don't you focus on the beautiful nutrition coming in and cleansing your cells and rebuilding your body and giving you energy and helping you sleep better and stop all that rumbling in your tummy. Think of all these beautiful things that are going to happen, not what you might miss out on because It's not serving you.
Yeah.
And so that was sort of the philosophy. As life went on, I had a couple of abusive husbands because you sort of, that pattern was pretty hardwired in my system. I needed to keep getting abused somehow, even though I didn't want it. And the second husband, because I was such a high achiever, I got myself a couple of investment properties. And being very naive, I was only in my late 20s at this stage. He wanted to go into a small business. And he just said, we could use your properties as equity to put towards. And I just said, that's a great idea. I was married to him at the stage. And guess what? The business failed. He walked away scot-free because our marriage ended. And I had a $500,000 debt and I was facing bankruptcy.
Whoa.
There's a big list here, Dr. Paul.
Yeah.
And I was actually homeless at that stage because interesting cycle of life. I walked away from him. And the listeners, I'm not saying that you walk away from something that you're deeply unhappy with, but sometimes you have to draw a line in the sand. And I went with my gut feeling and it just said, I've got to get out of here. And I walked away with one suitcase, which is exactly the cycle that I saw when I was 4 years old. So, life was unfolding for me. And I just thought, right, where to from here, Lise?
Yeah.
You're in a pretty dark hole. You're sick, you're unemployed, you're facing bankruptcy, and you're homeless. Okay, things are only got to get up. But I had that inner voice. It just kept saying, everything's going to be okay. I love the Abraham Hicks. It's a little mantra. Everything is always working out for me.
Yep. Yeah.
And I've said that probably beyond 1 trillion times. But that's what I've done, Paul, is I've had to shut down completely many, many times to go within and just try and assess what's going on. It's almost like an observer looking down and just saying, yep, well, this is a pretty big bowl of spaghetti right now.
Yeah.
And what I would do, some days because I was so depressed, so sick, just feeling so lost. I won't say hopeless, because I've never felt hopeless, because I believe there is always a way out. You just have to find it. But you've got to get quiet. You've got to go within. And I just plug myself into a lot of it was Tony Robbins. A lot of it was Jim Rohn. I was very blessed to be personally mentored by Mr. Jim Rohn, who was Tony Robbins' mentor. I've listened to thousands and thousands of hours of Abraham Hicks, because that's what I align with as well. So I would just be on repeat, because I needed to overwhelm the noise going on in my head with positive input, with meditation, with mantra, to help change my state, to rewire my nervous system from where it was at. And I've taken hundreds, if not thousands, of free courses of mentorship, of leadership, of rewiring your nervous system. I've done so much in the world of quantum and neuroscience, because I know, as a scientist, because I spent my career looking down a microscope, the cells actually have molecular structure, which at the end of the day is just vibrating energy. Mm-hmm. We are just a mass of vibrating energy put into a human form. And I love the Hawkins scale, the frequency of the colors and and understanding that there's an emotional status against those different frequencies of the body. And so when you understand that as well, and it's in line with the chakra system once again. And so Dr. Joe Dispenza has been, a gift to the world of exposing quantum and making it make science sense. He talks about he's demystifying it, and that it's not new. Humans just became greedy and the wrong type of power, that all of that was sort of removed from us. And now what I believe is there's a big awakening going on. It's people like you having this wonderful show and bringing all of these conscious people on to help others wake up and use that innate power that they have within them to, one, make a masterpiece of their own life, no matter what crap they've been through. I'm evidence of that. And to then pay that forward, to be a messenger, to help others wake up. And, when you're floating around with other high vibing people, it's just a magical trip and such a beautiful state to be in. And to be grateful, we talk about, people overuse the word manifestation, gratitude, all that, because I think because it's so trendy,
Mm-hmm.
There are people who talk it, but they don't embody it. And there is a massive difference between that. And when you're living in that high vibration, it's just your natural state of being. And of course, you attract. Life is a mirror.
Oh, yeah.
A negative, angry person, you're going to have angry, crappy things happen to you, and then blame other people for it.
Yep.
But when you're in that state of gratitude and love and compassion, then your world just opens up to what I say mystical levels of beauty and joy and happiness.
The bias disappears. You know, when you
Yes.
have that gratitude and love and kindness for everybody, of everything around you, all of the biases disappear, all the hate and pain and suffering and fear disappear. And you can embrace what matters the most.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you become well.
Mm-hmm.
Those conditions that were keeping you sick or in pain just start to fade away. As long as you've got good health practices in place.
Yeah, and when you mentioned earlier about diet and eating, you know, you got to. People don't understand that what we eat, the foods that we eat, also carry a vibration and a frequency.
Yes.
And if we can't eat, or we choose not to eat these high frequency foods, we're going to be at a very low frequency.
Yes.
We're not going to be tuning. We're not going to be able to tune into, you know, and correct our health.
Yes.
No.
Yes. So an easy way of the way I explain nutrition to my clients is nutrition is energy and information for our cells. And when you eat processed foods, there is no energy and no information in there. There is salt, fat, sugar, and chemicals.
Yeah.
There is no nutrition in there.
Yeah. And it's dead. It literally is dead. It's like, whoa. Yeah. Natural foods, fruits and vegetables, as I wouldn't say raw, but as raw as you can get them. I mean, if it came straight from the garden onto the plate, that's a whole different frequency. That's a really high frequency.
I was very fortunate because we spent a lot of time with my grandparents while my mother was hospitalized. Nana had a vegetable garden, and I had my little bucket. Every afternoon, we would walk around the garden and pick the veggies to cook for dinner that night. And, you know, it was like one bean for the bucket, one bean for me. And it was such a beautiful experience. And so I've always had herbs in my garden. I'm in an apartment now, so I'm a little bit restricted with having a veggie garden. But whenever I've had the opportunity, I have. And it's very simple.
Yeah.
So it's a great, and it connects you to nature. It gets people outdoors. It gets them to appreciate, you know, watching the bees in the garden and the butterflies and smelling the smells and, you know, turning on our senses rather than just living on that stupid scroll that's keeping us the unhealthy dopamine addicted to what we don't want to see, but we're seeing it anyway.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and eating all the crappy, low level, no dead foods, all the dead foods, serotonin levels and dopamine levels within the body with all this crazy stuff like that is really traversing our bodies into an even lower state and negative vibrations. Because it seems like most of the stuff that's out there is a negative vibration.
Yes.
Anyway. I mean, how often do you watch the news and it's a happy story?
I don't watch the news. I connected
rarely.
to no media like that.
Same here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd rather tune into a podcast and learn how to expand my brain.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. So now you are a master of helping people unleash their superpowers and changing this pain into power.
Yes.
Briefly describe that.
Well, it really just stems from pretty much everything that I've spoken about. I look at life and the universe as a whole, and not if you're listening to this, not watching this, I'm not talking about a hole in the ground. I've actually got my hands as though I'm holding a ball, like a universal ball.
Yeah.
So what I've really just moved away from, even though I still have a lot of one-on-one nutrition clients, I've made a massive pivot into developing a course that is based on the Wheel of Life, which I was very blessed to be mentored by a gentleman. Paul J. Meyer created the concept of the Wheel of Life many years ago. And it's sort of only really just coming to the forefront now in the last few years, since 2020. But when we focus on the health, the family, the social, the career, the financial, the spiritual, there is a process of how looking at this, working out what you're neglecting. Yeah. And because you can't just channel all your energy, I want to be successful financially, so just focus on everything trying to make money, the rest of your life is going to be neglected. Mm-hmm. And so I look at it as a holistic approach, and teach people how to look at each sector of the Wheel of Life. And basically we work out what's being neglected, how to actually then find a solution and bridge that gap, close the gap on bringing harmony back into that part of your life, but doing it with a progressive meditation process. Because generally people, there's been like we most of our patterning is from pre-birth, like our gestational environment of what our parents are going on with while we're in mum's tummy, to the age of 6. And that's pretty well where we've learnt pretty much how to be a human and what character traits we're going to have, which is most of the time pretty messed up. That's generally speaking, okay? Because of the cycle of whatever our parents are living in. Mm-hmm. So it's about how can we take all of the areas of your life, and while we're consciously working on building those up, we're also consciously learning how to rewire our subconscious. So taking on progressive meditation, everything is about stacking. So this is a stacking course to help people build on things over a progressive period of time. Because, you know, if people just got everything all at once, it wouldn't work. It's just like overwhelming. There's too much to take on. And so that's pretty much what I do now. And I love teaching mindfulness. I'm in the process of developing an app where there's going to be, you know, fun little 14-day, like a lot of free stuff where people can just do a 14-day mindfulness, a 14-day sleep habit. There'll be free meditations on there, and just woo out with me, really. So I want to impact the world. You know, my purpose, there was a point in my life, and I know we have to probably come towards the end of your show, but there was a life-defining moment. Have you got a couple of minutes where I can? Oh,
absolutely.
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah. So that, like, when people are reflecting on their life, you'll actually consciously, when somebody is forcing you to really look at your life, because a lot of the time we don't, you'll see timelines where things happened in your life and your life changed trajectory. And for me, there's probably 5 major timelines, but I was conscious of that. But back in 2011, I was in a conference in Singapore, and the speakers on stage, it was a leadership development weekend, and the speakers on stage were Korean, so it was through translation. But I had known these people for a while, and they were just beautiful. They just oozed out love. You could feel the love from these people. It was palpable.
Yeah.
And they had a big picture of a blue door on the screen. And I've been living the way of life of the Buddhist philosophy. I'm not a practicing Buddhist, but it's basically to live with compassion and kindness, and the way of just being. But the blue door in Buddhism represents the doorway to happiness and joy. But they put a different slant on it. They said, if your door is closed, you're going to find it hard to achieve happiness in life, because the doorway is the doorway to your heart. And I had this overwhelming pressure and crushing pain on my chest at that moment, and I just burst out crying. I was just around 40 years old. And I just thought at that moment, it was like a light bulb. It was like it was like a lightning strike.
Uh-oh.
I just thought, all of these years, my heart has been locked shut since that little 4-year-old girl saw her dad walk out the door.
Yeah.
And I just thought, because I lived with angry desire. I was a high achiever, no excuses. You can do it, I can do it. But at that moment, I just thought, I'm preventing from getting hurt, but I'm also preventing love coming in, and preventing me to love myself to how I need to love myself.
Yeah.
And it was at that moment of wow, that I had this, it was almost like a tank had been lifted off my chest. And I felt like a freeing moment. And I cried again, of course, because it was just so overwhelming. And I just felt so much love at that moment. And from that moment in time, which is really where the trajectory of my life took off, because I now live in inspired desire. It was sort of at that moment that I thought, I know I know my purpose. I know where I need to go with this. So and I want to make global impact. I want to be, a world changer, like you are helping the world wake up. I want to really help people understand that they can totally rewire the patterns that they're stuck in, no matter, even if they're not aware of it right now. It's, if we can plant the seed in that person that, hey, I actually think I want to investigate this a little bit further. If we can plant the seed for them to start moving forward, then you've done your job for now, and allowed them to open the door for moving forward in life.
Yeah. Yeah.
To get that joy and happiness.
Yeah. And then the next brick in the road on your direction will appear.
Yes.
Just baby steps. We got to take baby steps. Can't do everything all at one time and and expect it to actually work out right.
Yeah, look, there's been so many. I'm a girl who jumps off the cliff without a parachute, knowing that, like, this is just figuratively speaking. I know gravity is a real thing. That I have faith that what I'm looking for is going to put the parachute on my back. Sometimes I've misjudged and I've failed miserably, but it's about accepting that, hey, that was a great life experience. What did I learn out of that? Who were the people I met? What were the things that I don't do next time? So,
Yep.
like, get another stupid abusive husband. The guy I'm with now is okay. I've been with him 20 years. He's turning out okay.
Well, 20 years is definitely okay.
Oh, dear. He was pretty messy when we got together as well. So I think we've sort of helped each other walk the path of self-discovery.
Yeah, and that's what the companionship's about. You know, you help each other through these obstacles through life. When you can face it together and face these struggles together and get out of it together, then it was meant to be.
Yes, exactly. And if you don't grow together, you generally grow apart. And that's the cycle of life.
Yep.
There's 4 seasons.
Yep.
It's never going to change. It's been like that for thousands of years.
Absolutely. Lisa, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for coming on the show and sharing your wonderful work, your story.
Thank you.
Of resilience and awaken that giant, help awaken that giant in everybody.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
It's been an absolute honor.
Likewise. And for anybody out there who's going to be listening to this later, you can find her at on her website, Lisa, Lisa, Marree, MARREE.com. RREE. Don't forget that.
Yes, so much.
Awesome.
It's been a pleasure.
Namaste, my friend. Blessings.
Namaste.
So until next week, thank you for tuning into Conscious Radio Network's The Weekly Seance. And until then, we will see you next week.